Hi, this is Terry Bach, and welcome to the Rewrite Your Money Story series. I know that having the income you want often feels impossible. You work hard and you want to be paid well for that. You might even have some income goals, but they're just not happening, and you're really tired of downsizing your life to fit your income. You feel frustrated and hopeless about ever having the life that you want. So I have brought together some incredible experts who will talk about shattering your income goals. They each are going to talk about it from their own unique point of view. So today I have invited Jayne Ellegard and Julie Delene, who will talk about your relationship with money. Jayne is the founder and the coach of Elegant Wealth, which she created to empower women to show up and own their financial journey with courage, confidence, and wisdom. Her 6 pillars to financial empowerment closes the gap on the financial knowledge that women need and deserve. Julie is the founder of Move as One, which helps leaders and teams co-create and change human behavior to be more mindful. Using the 5 mindful moves, she guides co-creative growth by combining mindfulness with strategic leadership, performance, and ecosystem awareness. Julie introduces the system and facilitates moving conversations in a fun game format. She actually created a game for this. So welcome, Julie and Jayne.
Thank you.
Wow. Yes. Thank you.
Yes. So from the sound of what I just talked about, it sounds like you do very different things, and yet I know that you collaborate on a lot of projects. So can you tell us how you do that? How you work together?
Yeah, I would love to. I hosted some workshops, and Jayne came and sponsored them. And they were more around the consciousness of money and our relationship with money. And I used this mindfulness game. And what I really liked about Jayne was she had then the practical aspects of it to put it into, when the rubber hits the road.
Right, right.
But both are needed. And so we found each other perspectives to operate quite well together.
That's great. Jayne, do you have anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, I really enjoyed getting to work with Julie and seeing the game. And just to mention the game a little bit, it's so powerful. There's these cards, and it seems like wherever you're at in your life, you choose the card that you just happen to have needed at that particular point in time. And so it's just a really wonderful creative game that again really just ties in with what I'm doing, which again I think as Julie said is a little bit more practical and gives you a little more, here's how to move forward, here's some things you can actually do, but I think the two together really are beautiful.
That's wonderful. I know you both bring a lot to this, but what makes you so excited about this topic of money, relationship with money, moving, empowering women, leaders?
I've been working with women leaders and their teams for the last 15 years primarily. I've been doing Move as One for the last 22. Okay. But I saw money being an obstacle to success in so many organizations and so many women entrepreneurs. And I began to question the paradigms, what are these paradigms that are stopping us? What's our consciousness? And, along came the Me Too movement, and I developed this mindfulness game. Okay. I thought, what a great conversation to have with women is to put money on the table and have a wise women conversation using the game. And this began this it's almost 4 years now of a journey of exploring this conversation with other women. And through that, why I got so excited was I started to see some of my old wounds, my personal wounds coming up to the table as well. And when you sit with others and you're able to have a community, a safe space of having a really deep, meaningful conversation with others, healing happens. We try to do it all alone, but to be able to now to bring it to a collective and share this wisdom with others and see other women move, transform, there's nothing, it's inspiring to us, but it also helps to change the collective consciousness around our money stories.
Good point. And I also find in working with groups of women around money sometimes that we often feel so isolated with our money issues. And so it's nice to hear that others are dealing with some of the same things.
It's a taboo topic,
It is. Yeah. Jayne, were you going to say something?
Yeah, well, I spent 30 plus years in investments and wealth management, working with high net worth individuals primarily. And I just would see over and over again this gap in the financial education that women have received. And it's so important for women to understand this important aspect of their lives. When you think about the fact that 8 out of 10 women will end up on this journey alone, whether they never marry, they're divorced, or they're widowed, they will have to step up and take responsibility for this area of their lives. And as women, we often don't make as much as men. We retire younger, often because we've married a man who's older than us, so we end up retiring earlier. So we don't make as much, we don't have as much time, and yet we live longer. And so the need for us to have this understanding, we also often take time out of our careers to take care of somebody else, whether it be our children or our parents. And so again, there's just so many reasons why we don't necessarily have as much accumulated at the end of our lives. And so we really need to understand the impact and the importance. And then women learn collaboratively, just as you and Julie were just speaking about. We learn collaboratively. That's why we have book clubs. It's why we have cabbie parties and jewelry parties. And it goes back to, Tupperware and Avon.
Right.
And, it's something that we've always known that we've needed. And yet, what's the one thing we're not talking about?
Right.
It's money.
Exactly.
Yes, money is taboo. And so part of it is breaking that money is taboo barrier and bringing women together to acknowledge this. And the magic is the women coming together.
Right. Brilliant.
And I'd also like to say there's a big thrust right now of women following their passions and bringing out the wisdom of their bodies to offer products and businesses and things that are really serving us. It's not just falling under one. Mary Kay Cosmetics is one. I know they really empower women, and it's great. But it's just having a variety of different purposes, and how do we, crack the code?
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah. So what do you find to be some of the common money problems that come up?
Well, as I created this balance wheel that's based on nature, how to move as one. And we're always leaning toward one area or another that we're comfortable with. So each person has a different area, but generally overall, I see a lot of women, being those healers, those nurses, those caretakers. And that's on one side where they're not as entrepreneurial. They don't know how to use their strategic skills and balance that out. So that's one area. The other is we're strong educators. We're in the school systems, but we educate, we're teachers in many different ways. And that's just a whole nother element of that's needing to balance as well, from a strong, strategic, intentional direction. And those two areas tend to be a strong thrust for women, or it's weighted in women's careers. So we just need to learn how to be much more entrepreneurial, intentional, balance that out. And if we're too strong in drive, we need to take care of ourselves as well.
Right.
So those are kind of three different areas.
And I think women often lack the confidence to do a lot of that because we weren't, I mean, at least our generation wasn't really, we weren't trained to be that way or socialized to be.
Well, a lot of us weren't trained at all in what that ecosystem awareness is what I talk about as far as that balance. But so I talk about it as either some are just taking the money in, they're like bankers, or they're spending like they're celebrities, and or they're using their money to take care of others. But investing has not been our strong suit, and how to be strategic investors, and not just from invest in the stock market. It's about a purposeful impact investing approach to life of how we care for our money in that way.
And being okay with investing in our businesses too, if we're an entrepreneur. Yeah.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Jayne, do you have anything?
Yeah, I would just add to that. And, you know, I so oftentimes hear women say that they don't have an interest in this area, or that they find it either very scary or intimidating. And I think we need to get past that, again, because of, you know, the reasons that we've been talking about. But in particular, I see it in the investment area. Oftentimes, you know, we divide and conquer, which I understand completely. We kind of need to do that oftentimes, but I'll hear women say, oh, I'm fine, my husband handles that part of our financial situation.
Right.
And again, you know, what I keep trying to get across is, but you may need to understand that at some point in time for whatever significant life reason happens to, you know, take place.
Right.
And so, you know, trying to learn that, and in particular the investments. And again, I think it's been a very male-dominated field, the investment area, and it's an area that, you know, was created by men for men. And so a big part of what I try to do is trying to unpack that lingo and trying to make it friendlier. I don't dumb it down, but I make it friendlier so that it's easier to understand. And so I think that's part of it as well, is just kind of shifting the mindset around the conversation that's actually taking place, and the how we're communicating that.
Right. That's in a way that's more comfortable for women.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yes.
Good. So you're kind of talking about budgeting, and I know that that's a big area. It certainly is with the women I work with, and men. I work with some men too. But what are some of the struggles you have or you see when you're working with women related to budgeting?
Well, a similar thing as far as just a comfortableness with money, and the fact that we need to be more intentional with it. But getting a little bit too prescriptive instead of more creative can be some of the, you know, not trusting your inner gut, not trusting, again, how you want to invest. So there's budgeting is an art, you know, it's something we have to allow room for. There's some really good, as Jayne will talk about, there's some really good ways to do it, and we can structure it, but also allowing ourselves to check in and be connected to what's the art of this and how do we do this best for what we're wanting to move forward. But I'd like to talk overall about just the mindset shifts, and we can talk about that more next. But Jayne, yeah, I'd like to say about that.
Yes. Jayne, how would you contribute to that? What issues do you find with women in budgeting?
Yeah, so I heard this talked about it, Hillary Hendershot on Profit Boss Radio, who I think is incredible, but she used the terminology, and so I've kind of adopted it as well, of treasures, promises, and fun. So tomorrow's treasures, what are you saving for the future? Your past promises, what have you already committed to? So your mortgage, your car payment, whatever promises you've already made. And then what's left over is for today's fun. And so again, I think trying to shift the terminology, budgeting sounds kind of it's
Like
kind of
dieting.
a word, right? Yeah, like
Yes.
dieting, exactly. And so trying
Right.
to, again, not dumbing it down, but making it a little bit friendlier and make it sound more interesting, right? I mean, treasures, promises, and fun sounds a lot more interesting
Exactly.
than budget.
Budgeting sounds like deprivation.
Yeah, exactly.
It absolutely
It
does.
just does, like dieting. Who wants to diet, you know? Yeah,
Exactly. And so I think getting women to kind of shift that mindset, and I think the other thing
absolutely.
to get all of us thinking about is, thinking about tomorrow's treasures first.
Right.
And so I think we often forget that, if you pay yourself first and get that money just tucked away, so you're
Mhm.
not even seeing it or looking at it, it's not available for you to spend, that means that that's there for you in the future. And so I think, again, that mind shift, I think Julie's going to talk about this a little bit more, but that mind shift
Okay.
of what's truly important to me. And then, so looking at what it is you're spending and then prioritizing.
Right.
I think there's things that we all really want to achieve that's really, really important to us. And so making sure that that's top of mind, that that's at the top of your list. And so living beautifully in those areas, but then cutting ruthlessly everywhere else.
Yeah, so it's really getting clear on what you're wanting your life to look like in the future, and then kind of reorganizing your money
Exactly.
that you can have those things in the future.
A
Yeah.
lot of the way we talk about that is impact investing. Where do we want to have the greatest impact? How do we start to focus not just, again, investing in outside funds,
Right.
but our business and the way that we want to live our lives. So how do we
Right.
that impact?
Yes. Okay.
Impact.
So
I love what Jayne talks about with words and how to, so much of our mindset and programming is based on the language that we have.
It is.
So the more that we can make that a lot more fun and inviting and not having to be honorary men. And, that's one of the things I point out with how we've been operating under a hierarchical model for so long, that there's this power over. And as a result of that kind of language, we haven't felt as empowered
Right.
from a co-creative approach.
Right.
But that has been shifting over the last 40 years with New Thought leadership. That's helping us all, bring in the coaching world, empower other people. And we're looking for more of this co-creation, and that requires a different language. How do we speak about these instead of coming into, forcing it? And that's kind of how I feel about budgeting, is I'm forcing myself to do these certain things rather than getting into the playfulness, the art, the beauty of it, the energy behind the money, having all that. That's part of being mindful. Just knowing
Exactly. Yeah.
How are you motivated? What is motivating you? What parts are you activating as you step into the world, as you make your impact? All that takes a lot of confidence.
It does. And it takes some reframing or from some mindfulness shifts, as you were both talking about. So what mindset shifts do you think, in addition to what you've already talked about, but what do you think are important? What kind of shifts do you think are important in our relationship with money?
Well, first, I'd like to say, it's the awareness of what is your relationship to money? Where do you get hooked? Is what's getting you hooked? Or what's a pothole? What's making you trip at the same time, around money. So just really examining some of those common things of how are we in relationship with others around money? How do we spend for our healthcare and our fun? Are we buying homes that are too extravagant and it's sucking all the life out of us, and we have to focus on that? Just finding out where we get hooked And so it takes that awareness. And then the second, and the potholes, the second is finding the blind spots, which the reason I think Jayne and I work so well is that she can start to alleviate some of those blind spots that we just haven't even been paying attention to.
Okay.
So the more that we can see the bigger picture, find those blind spots of how we've been operating in different ways. And I know Jayne and I both talk a lot about our family histories. How
Right.
what were the messages we received?
Yeah, because that becomes our beliefs and our mindset too. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's a whole big piece, but just this simple awareness. And that's the fun of the game, is that you get questions that are relevant to you, and it's what's top of mind. And then as you start to dig deeper and you see other people's responses too, it helps to see some of those patterns.
I want to find out more about this game, but first, Jayne, I want to talk about a little bit about the blind spots that Julie just mentioned. What are some of those?
Well, I talk a lot about money, values, and beliefs, and getting women to, we're so often so busy taking care of everybody else and checking the to-dos off our task list. And so getting women to take a step back and give themselves some space and time to really think about, what are the money, values, and beliefs that I grew up hearing, because those are deeply embedded.
Yes, they are.
Grew up hearing them, they're deeply embedded, and getting them to stop. I have them do this little exercise where I have them draw out a family tree and really think about, what are the money, values, and beliefs that were handed down from my grandparents to my parents to me, and then what are the money, values, and beliefs I'm handing down to my next generation, or my nieces and nephews, or whoever it happens to be in your life, and how are those impacting everything that you're doing. You're making decisions today based on those money, values, and beliefs without even potentially realizing it.
Exactly.
And because money intertwines with every aspect of your life, it impacts your relationships. Who here hasn't had a fight with a loved one over money?
Right.
Very true.
I mean, right? And it's because of these money, values, and beliefs, and you have two people who are coming at it from different perspectives, different mindsets, and now you're trying to mesh those. And so it impacts relationships, your careers, your dreams. So understanding that, and so taking a step back, I think, is really important to starting to move forward, so that you understand why you're making the decisions that you're making.
Very good point. Do you find that most people are able to kind of connect the dots from generation to generation?
They are. It's so much fun to see the women. So when I run my cohorts, they do this exercise prior to coming in. They come in, and then we open it up for them to share. And they love getting to share this and actually getting to talk about it. For some of them, it's the first time they've really ever talked about it and shared, and they have stories to tell around it. And so, yes, they absolutely make those connections.
Yeah, it's probably the first time they've ever thought about it too, in that context. Yeah.
Exactly, it is.
Right.
I think one of the other blind spots, I know that Jayne, you point to, is net worth. Just taking a look at and defining that's a real practical aha moment of being able to say, what's my net worth, and have those conversations with others as well, and finding out where we are in the whole history and where we are going in the future and what's needed. So that helps to bring out some of the blind spots as well.
True. Do you want to add anything to that, Jayne?
Yeah, and that's a great point, Julie. I think looking at that net worth statement, looking at your cash flow, and what we do is we continue to tie back and look at everything through that lens of your money, values, and beliefs. And so tying your goals, tying your net worth statement, your cash flow, your investments, tying all of that back to, what are the money, values, and beliefs that I have, and looking at it through that lens really changes how you view any of those topics.
Very true. Yeah. So, Julie, would you share a little bit more about the game? I know you've both talked about it a bit, but I'm curious about what it does. And
Yeah, it's a mindfulness game in that well, it first introduces a balanced ecosystem, a balanced whole system of how we create anything really in this world.
okay.
And so it can be used for many different topics. But like I said, money seemed to be one of those that was popping up the most
Sure.
as an
Sure.
issue. And what is pervasive in our culture?
Mm-hmm.
It's money. Money is power in our culture.
Well, it
Uh,
touches everything,
it
pretty
touches everything.
much. Yeah.
So anyway, this game guides us through 5 mindful moves or cycles, and it's based on some ancient wisdom. But I've been pulling and using questions for years to guide this conversation,
Okay.
and through some different activities, and it helps to get us in touch a little bit more with, again, how we're thinking about things,
Mm-hmm.
how we're feeling about things, uh, even making the body integration piece, because when we get in our bones, we make change. We can talk about things all day long,
True.
and
Yeah.
we're kind of operating from here as a culture. So the more that we get to this embodied place of awareness and understanding,
Mm-hmm.
that's where real transformation happens. So the game gently and guides us, and it creates a fun way of having this very deep and meaningful conversation, and again, with community, with
Yes.
others. I do it alone too. I mean, I will do it in a one-on-one, and it always takes us deeper, um,
Okay.
deeper conversation.
Interesting. What's the name of your game?
It's called Your Wise Moves.
Very cool. And where do you get it? Where do
Well, right now I'm starting to teach others to be facilitators of it.
Okay. Okay.
Um, the it's in the works to have it be an online app, and
Okay. Very nice.
once that happens, then people will be able to have it right in their hands and use it. And I want it overall for, I mean, there's so many conversations, many family conversations, many, reaching your teens, having those types of conversation around some issue that's feeling stuck. But with your
Wow.
partner having a conversation,
Mm-hmm.
and it helps disrupt our thought patterns so that we can get to this more whole ecosystem awareness. And that helps to broaden us from just our individual selves to the larger perspective of who we are.
What do you mean by ecosystem? You've used that term.
So an ecosystem is an integrated system.
Okay.
Relationships are built, and we can't operate outside of ecosystems.
Mm-hmm.
We think of them as purely, nature, outside of us, which when we look at nature, it teaches us a lot about what is co-creation. How does it work together? How does it make a seed into a large tree? How do we
True.
get that fruition? So that kind of awareness, but inside of us, we have an ecosystem, we have a culture, we have, our cells are working together, and they can be triggered and move in a healthy manner,
Mm-hmm.
all the way from the way we think and feel. So
Wow.
how we think and feel starts to put things into motion that affects our physical body and the physical nature of who we are as humans. So the relationship to our money, the relationship to others,
Mm-hmm.
the relationship to our business, all that can be initiated by understanding the ecosystem of it. So I look at an ecosystem from the inside out. How is an ecosystem working inside of you? How does an ecosystem work as a team? And how does an ecosystem work as an organization? And families are ecosystems. How do we
True.
step? There's a whole relationship that is happening. That's part of the unseen relationship,
Mm-hmm.
and how to get that into a positive flow is how we start to nurture a healthy ecosystem or a healthy culture.
Brilliant, brilliant. Okay. So what's, from each of you, what's one tip that you can give people who really want to shift their relationship with money?
Well, first thing, it's understand how you feel about money. What's your relationship? Really starting to question that and look at it as a relationship, that it's not controlling you, and that there's this relationship. Understand how you feel about it. What do you do with your money? How do you play with it? How do you think about it? And find those hooks that aren't serving you.
Okay, great. Jayne?
Yeah, I think there's a couple different things. First, it's never too late. I often hear women say, "Oh, it's too late for me to learn about money now," and so why bother? There's too much to learn. But it's never too late. And so start today, start now, start with small little steps that will help you move in the right direction, in the direction that you want. So it's never too late. I think that's just really important. The other thing is, don't be intimidated by money. Money isn't scary. Money is a tool, and it provides you with flexibility and freedom and so many wonderful things. So viewing it as a tool to achieve what you want to accomplish is a valuable way to look at it and to shift that mindset around how you view it. And the other thing I would say is start talking about money. Find people that you can feel comfortable with. We would love to be able to talk with you about money, but I think finding friends and family members who are willing to start being more open and start sharing that conversation with you is a great way to get started.
Yes. It takes the charge out of it. It takes the fear out of and the anxiety when you're sharing it, I think.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I understand you each have a gift for the audience. So Jayne, do you want to tell us a little bit about the gift you have?
Yeah, my gift is called the My Financial Happiness Quiz. And it takes you through some questions to kind of figure out where you stand today with regards to how you feel about your financial situation. And you answer those questions, you come up with a score. And then once you have that score, you get the opportunity, it'll come back and say, well, maybe you're fiscally challenged right now, and it might give you some steps. What are some limiting beliefs that you might have around your financial situation today? And it'll provide you with some steps to start to take to make that mind shift, as well as offer up a few resources that might be helpful to you to start moving forward. And so for whatever your score is, it'll give you some tips and some steps to start moving in a slightly different direction.
Wonderful. Thank you. And Julie?
Mine's similar. Well, it's an assessment, and I call it Money Patterns Assessment. And it's the first step to diving deeper into what your relationship is with money and the impact it has on your balanced ecosystem. So looking at that relationship, how is it impacting yourself is one area. Your relationships, another area. How is it affecting your work and your choices in work? And how's it affecting your lifestyle and the house that you have, the time off that you take? And so just looking at it from I'm a consultant, so I always am looking at and doing an assessment of something to find out where's the balance or where is it out of balance, and how do we start to infuse some more wholeness to this.
Well, you do have to kind of know where you are before you can make movement. Right. Yeah. Thank you.
It's a real easy assessment tool. So
okay, great. And for the audience, all you need to do is click on the buttons below this video, and that will take you to each of the gifts. So Jayne and Julie, thank you so much for being here. I so appreciate your time and your information. I really enjoyed talking about the relationship with money with both of you. And also thank you to our audience for being here. And stay tuned for later for our next expert who will also be sharing their perspective on shattering your income goals. Bye for now.
Thank you.